Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Ducky Aquatics. In this video I'm going to be going over some common reasons why your guppies are dying and some of the things you can do to help stop this from happening in the future. So if you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that one of the main fish that I keep is guppies. So all of these tanks down here are actually quarantine tanks with different strains of guppies. These guys have all recently just gone through a deworming process. I did have 6 of these red-tailed blonde guppies, and I've only got 4 left now, and the ones that I've got left still aren't the happiest. So that female there's got a bit of a waddle to her and is quite round. I don't think it's because she's pregnant. I think it's just because the deworming was quite stressful on these fish, but unfortunately it's something that I have to do because I'm somebody who breeds and then sells more fish to other people, so it's just doing due diligence. If more breeders and stuff did this sort of thing, it wouldn't be a problem for most people who are keeping guppies having them drop dead in the first place. So the number one thing that I find will kill guppies is you'll go to the shop, you'll buy some, you'll take them home, you'll put them in your aquarium, you'll fall in love with them, and then within the next couple of weeks you'll decide to go buy some more. The same store that you've bought from previously for your original guppies may not have any more that you want because you want a different color and variety, so you'll go to a different store. And then that's when the problems will start. So when you buy guppies from multiple stores and you don't quarantine them and you put them straight into your display tank, what can happen is the guppies will either be from different breeders, different wholesalers, or different farms. And the reason why that's a problem is because every one of those places will have their own type of bacteria that's colonized in their tanks or ponds where they're breeding. And quite often when you're mixing fish from different places like that, the bacteria are different and they'll start to compete inside the fish, and then you'll have bacterial problems which will cause seemingly healthy fish to just drop dead over the span of a few weeks. So you might notice your new fish that you put in will be the first ones to start dropping dead, and then what will happen is over the next couple of weeks your original fish that you got that were doing fine might start falling off the perch as well. And that's because the bacteria from the new fish is now starting to interact with the old fish, and the old fish's bacteria was the ones that overwhelmed your new fish's internal bacteria and stuff like that, and it just wreaked havoc on the fish. So there's 2 ways you can kind of get around that. Is you quarantine your new fish first and slowly drip acclimate them with your tank water from your tank that you want to put them into. You don't have to have like a quarantine tank, so to speak. Like I use buckets, that's why I've got buckets all around here, because I use them for all different things. The other thing you can do as well is you can get your fish, like when you do a large water change, you can have a UV sterilizer filter in there. Do a water change before, like a day or so before you buy your new fish, with the UV sterilizer, and that'll kind of control some of the free floating bacteria. And then when you've acclimated your new fish to the tank water, instead of tipping the bag from the bag water out into the tank, strain them out into the net, then put the new fish into the tank, and you can put 1 tablespoon per 10 liters of good quality aquarium salt into the tank to dissolve, and that will kind of help them settle in and not have that issue. So that's a couple ways you can get around it, but I would opt for having them in a bucket for the first few days and just get them used to the new tank water first. So if any of them drop dead, it's not actually going to affect your old fish in the tank. So that's probably one of the more common reasons why you'll find your guppies will kind of drop dead. The second thing that can happen is you can get them where they'll come in with, I don't think these guys have been quarantining because they were sick, but I think the meds have finally worked. But you can get them where the fins will be slightly clamped. Like you can see on the top of this guy, this rummy nose tetra here, his fin is slightly clamped compared to the one that was just swam past below. That was a mild fungal infection. So you may not notice it at first because there are multiple different types of fungal infections your guppies can get, but if there's any little fungal infection on the fin, especially for guppies that usually have quite large flowing fins, it can wreak havoc on the tank. And again, that's something you can treat with either a methylamine blue, which is the antifungal side. There's also the green one as well. But I find, again, the easiest solution to that is to quarantine them first, or just really closely observe the fish to make sure there's no issues like that. And again, adding some good quality aquarium salt to the tank can be a good preventative measure, just because that will kind of dehydrate and kill off some of the fungus before it can really spread out in the tank. Otherwise, again, a UV sterilizer power head filter in the aquarium will just kind of kill any of those floating particulates in the water, which will help stop them from spreading to the fish, and then help stop the fish from contracting it and dying. It's not to be confused with sometimes male guppies will fin nip at each other, so you can get tattered tails like that, which can be a sign of a fungal or bacterial infection. But in this case, it's just because the males are fighting with each other for the females, because there's not as many mature females in here as there once were. And then another bacterial problem that you can run into is if you have fish that are starting to waste away. You won't really see them here because I'm very diligent with this, but they'll get what I like to call a death wattle. These ones down here have gone through a deworming treatment, so they're kind of skinny, so they almost look like what you've got to look out for, but you'll see the females are quite slender. They're still swimming quite healthy, but the one at the bottom here, see how she's got more of a wattle to her swim? For her, it's because she's actually got a larger tail and then gone through deworming, but that's an indicator if they're really laboring to swim and they've got that real wiggle wobble to them when they're swimming, that they could have a bacterial infection like the fish tuberculosis or fish TB. They will start to waste away, they'll get that death wattle to them. You'll really see the gill plates on the guppies. Like these ones are really fat and healthy, so you won't see it on here on them, but right behind the eyes where the gill plates are, you'll see the gill plates kind of sticking out in a fork, and they go like that when the fish is breathing, because it always looks like the fish is laboring to breathe as they're wasting away. So that can be a sign of the TB. To my knowledge, there's no easily available treatment in Australia for that, so I would actually just remove the fish from the aquarium entirely and euthanize it just so it doesn't spread. I find with TB, it'll probably be present in most aquarium stores and most aquarium fish naturally because it's such a widespread thing already. But for them to contract the physical symptoms, I find it usually happens when they've undergone a lot of stress. And if you've left any dead bodies in the fish tank and they've started to pick at them and eat it, that's when things go downhill. So when you've had a tank full of really nice guppies and you notice you can't find one and it's died somewhere, and then all of a sudden, week by week, you notice your guppy starting to waste away and then starting to die as well, that's usually that fish has either succumbed to something like TB or internal parasites, and then the fish actually picking at the body have contracted the bacteria or the internal parasites, and that's slowly killing them. So I'll use that as a segue to the next one in a moment. But the other way you can tell if it is TB, quite often the one or both eyes will be bulging out of the head, and it can look quite inflamed. So it'll be a really bright red ring out of the eye coming out, and at that point there's nothing you can do. If you notice fish like that, get it out. Just, put it in an ice bath or something to euthanize it, because it's just going to be a nightmare for you to try and deal with. Now, the other one that I mentioned before was internal parasites. I regularly deworm my fish for 2 parasites. One is tapeworm, the other one is Camellinus redworms. I find the Camellinus redworms more of a problem than tapeworm, but the medicine I use actually treats both of them. I will do a pest prescription in another video for how to easily access the dewormer for the Camellinus redworms. But what will happen is you'll notice out of the cloaca or anal, where the anal fin is on the guppies, you'll see these little red hair-like threads. So it's this little dried bit of string algae that's on here. So you see that, if it will focus on the glass here. So you'll see something like that, but maybe only that much of it sticking out. It'll be red colored. That's a Camellinus redworm. You may notice a cluster of them sticking out. At that point, you're not going to be able to really save that fish. You can still treat it and it might work. I've had it work where it has saved it, but it's a 50-50 shot of the dewormer actually saving it versus the dewormer actually killing the fish. But when you've got your entire tank and you can see at least a couple of fish with the worm sticking out, you do need to treat the entire tank by that point. The dewormer widely available in Australia is levamisole. It is not able to kill the worms per se. You'll actually have to gravel back the tank after 3 days, because it's only going to paralyze them and then send them out into here. So you gravel back the entire bottom of the tank. You don't need to get rid of all your plants or anything like that, but you will need to treat the aquarium several times after, especially if it's your main aquarium where you've got lots of plants, maybe snails and stuff like that. So it could be every 2 weeks for 2 months that you have to do that sort of treatment. But the Camellinus redworms can affect pretty much every single fish that you have. So it's not strictly a guppy or live bearer problem. That is actually a problem for a lot of fish. And I've had the battle with them so many times. I consider myself a pseudo expert in getting rid of those worms, just because I've unfortunately had to deal with it so many times. So now that's why I've come up with everything gets put in quarantine buckets. So they are the main culprits for why your guppies will die. The other thing that can happen too is if they get things like white spot, salt will treat that. You can get specialized white spot remedies for it as well. But a lot of people, if you ask them on Facebook, because they're all experts on Facebook, they'll tell you, oh no, you need to add this medicine, you need to add salt to the aquarium, and then you need to turn the temperature of your heater up to 28 or 26 degrees to kill the white spot. That is a great way to kill your entire tank of fish, because you've changed 3 parameters in rapid succession without taking into account that if the temperature swings by 3 degrees in an aquarium, that can cause a fish die off as well. So if you have a temperature swing in a couple of hours of 3 degrees either way, that can kill all your fish as well. Pick one, and over the period of a few days, do one of each of those things. Contrary to popular belief, 22 to 24 degrees is more than sufficient for guppies. If the higher your temperature is for your guppies, the faster their metabolism and lifespan accelerates. So you can have fish die prematurely just because the water temperature is up higher. The higher temperature can also exacerbate every single one of the problems that I have previously mentioned. So the bacteria can grow faster, the life cycle of the parasites can grow faster, fungal infections can become more prominent. So 22 to 24 degrees is all you need for guppies. I mean, I've had this fish room, nothing in here gets heated. I don't heat the room or anything. And in winter, it drops down to 17, 18 degrees and the guppies are still fine. So you don't need to have them up at 26 to 28 degrees. It's just cooking your fish for no reason. I mean, I've got blue rams in this tank and they've gone all winter without a heater as well. So, don't believe everything that everyone says on Facebook. 22 to 24 degrees Celsius and you should have a way less problems with your fish. Then the only other thing you need to consider for stopping your guppies from dropping dead prematurely is what food you're feeding. So a simple flake food is not sufficient for guppies all the time. You can feed it to them, 2 or 3 days out of the week, but for the other days you'll need to feed them something else. I usually use either frozen food, a live food, or a freeze-dried food. So this is freeze-dried brine shrimp. You can use freeze-dried bloodworms or blackworms. They just come as a cube. You break them up. One of these cubes will do a tank full of guppies, no problem. Feed it to them every second day, and that'll just stretch out how long that food lasts, and then feed the flake food in between that as well, and you'll have way less problems with your guppies dying. Because especially if you've got female guppies and they're giving birth, what will happen is they will need more nutrients to develop babies, because if a female guppy mates once with a male guppy, she'll technically be perpetually pregnant for the rest of her life. So if she's not getting enough nutrients and protein from the fish food, then you can find that they'll give birth and then drop dead. So that's a very common thing as well. If they're not eating the correct food, is your female guppies will drop fry, and the stress of that will also kill them. So what you're feeding them is very important. You can get a brine shrimp hatchery if you're a crazy person like me and got a garage full of fish tanks, and those two hatcheries are worth their weight in gold. I sell Daphne cultures on my website, which are, oops, sorry, strobe light. Let's see if I can zoom in without, no, I can't. I'll pull one of these out so you can see. All these are a single little copepods, those little squiggly things there. My sister calls them squiggles. They breed to the power of 10 like every couple of days, so they're great little supplementary food for a tank full of fish. And as you can see, I just use the little takeaway containers to grow them out, and I feed them either green water for my 2 or 3 green water tanks down there, or I give them some yeast I've dissolved up in some water, and that's more than enough just to meet the protein requirements for the guppies. The benefit to feeding, again, the brine shrimp, either live or freeze-dried, and then those little copepods, is it also provides them that little bit of calcium they need for their bone structure as well. So if you do those things, you shouldn't have problems with your guppies. Try and get you fish all from the same place at the same time. I used to think when I was out of memory then, I used to think when I was little, you get the fish in smaller amounts, buy a couple from this aquarium, put it into your tank, then get some more later and put them into your aquarium. And I always used to have trouble keeping my guppies alive. As I've gotten older, I've realized it's better buy all your guppies at one time that you want from the same supplier, stock the tank the way you want it to be stocked, and then if you're starting to run into the problems with ammonia spike or anything like that, change the water. You don't need to clean the filter for an ammonia spike. You need to just change the water to get all the ammonia out of the water, just so that your beneficial bacteria has time to culture in your aquarium filter and substrate. I know quite often we're impatient as fish keepers. We set up a tank, we don't want to wait for it to cycle, we just want to add the fish in and then be done with it. You can do that. You've just got to be very careful about what you're doing. Monitor your tank. If you see the water starting to get a little bit of a white haze to it, that's usually a telltale sign that it's ammonia spike happening. Just do your water change then, and then keep your filter going until it's developed the beneficial bacteria. You can get all the beneficial bacteria starters as well. They work great as well. But I think if you just do these couple of tips that I've given you, you shouldn't run into the issues with guppies. If you have any questions, ask away. I'm pretty good at replying to everyone. If you've enjoyed the video or learned something, give it a like, subscribe if you want to. If you don't want to, that's cool too. And I'll see you in the next one, hopefully without my fish room being a complete sty.